I know you have all been waiting for this. It's been a long time coming, but yes, this is the Project Royal Enfield video where the cam gets installed on my classic 350. We've done the Stage 2 air filter, the Fuel X light, the full exhaust, and a couple of other minor things, but now, finally, the Kent Performance Cam, which was purchased off of Hitchcock Motorcycles. A link to the cam as well as to all the other parts that have been installed on this classic 350 will be in the description below. I'll be straightforward about this. If you're looking for a guide or a tutorial on how to install the camshaft, yeah, this is not going to be the video for you. There are a handful of really great videos on YouTube already that would explain the process step by step far better than I ever could. The video by Tiger Ness, who I've shouted out before, has the best video on this. Honestly, my knowledge of engine work is minimal at best, and for me to attempt to dissect and describe this whole process would be completely disingenuous. So if you do decide to install the cam yourself, instead of having a shop do it, check that video out and tell them I said thank you and hello. So it's for that very reason I had this cam installed for me by my friends and partners at Works Powersports of Fort Wayne, Indiana. They are a Royal Enfield dealer and service center here in the Midwest. They also carry Triumph motorcycles, Indian, Beta, Moto Marini, and even the Polaris Slingshot. I'm hoping in the future they can help me get my hands on a Scram 411 and do a separate Project Royal Enfield series on that bike, or who knows. Either way, a huge thank you has to go out to them, because without them, this video wouldn't be possible. The Performance Cam is, like I said, available on Hitchcock Motorcycles. I can't remember how much it cost. I think upwards of around $250, maybe $300 American. And by the time of filming this, the cam is out of stock. But when they do become available again, you kind of have to snap them up right away. They don't tend to last very long before selling out, and then you have to wait another month or so before the next batch comes in. According to Hitchcock, the cam is supposed to give a good improvement to the mid to top end range. It's supposed to make cruising speeds more attainable while keeping that torquey low end, which is a very weird thing to say since the 350J series is by no means torquey in any sense of the word. But whatever, their words, not mine. Anyway, they include a dyno graph that shows the difference between a stock bike and a modified one with very similar parts compared to what I have on my classic 350. According to the graph, it's showing an increase in roughly 5 horsepower, which translates to approximately 33%. A 33% in horsepower with all the parts installed on the bike versus a stock one is a huge difference. Moving along here, so Works had not done a cam upgrade on a 350J series before, but they have on a Himalayan 411 and many other bikes, and from what I understand, the process of swapping a cam on a 411 is a little bit more involved than that of the 350J. They made it look easy, practically whipping through the job without really any snags or issues. A lot of people online say a cam swap on a 350 isn't hard at all, but I didn't want to take the risk myself because it's so far out of left field for me, and I was nervous about messing something up. Here's a shot of both the cams side by side, just for reference. And it didn't take the techs long at all to swap this and get everything back in working order. Maybe an hour tops, which to my understanding is nothing compared to other bikes that take maybe several hours to deal with. Once the cam was swapped and everything was put back together, it was fired up with 0 issues. It was perfect. But what's it like after the swap? Well, for one, it does sound different. More aggressive and deeper in tone than before, which is probably not easy to pick up off of a video. As far as performance, well, it's very interesting to say the least. People would often say that when you do all of these performance mods that it feels like a completely different bike, especially after the camshaft is installed. And I would say that those people are correct. It's far more torquey, the bike pulls far harder than she ever did. I think that personally, though, the power is most noticeable from, say, second to fourth gear. When you rip on the throttle, it's less gentle in its power delivery. Now the bike wants to move with authority. I did, however, notice that the low-end torque suffers just ever so slightly. I actually rode around a bit with Brandon, who is one of the techs at Works. He was on a stock Classic 350. He was blown away by how different my modified bike was, and we even did a side-by-side acceleration test, both with a rolling start at the same speed and from a dead stop. Even with my shit launch, I still flew by Brandon with very little effort, which is evident if you look at my left mirror.
Well, that was quite a big difference.
Yeah, it pulls hard now.
Way harder. You just like kept going. I'm like, what the?
But it's one thing to say that the bike pulls harder and the bike feels faster. It's another thing to physically prove it. So, as I've done before, I recorded some data using my Dragy device to give you guys accurate numbers. For reference, a stock bike's 0 to 60 is around, say, 14 to 15 seconds. Prior to the cam, I got my bike to around 11 seconds according to the speedometer and 12.4 seconds actual. With the cam installed, the numbers have further changed, but in a rather odd way. So I did several tests, both on camera and off because, well, my battery died on the GoPro and I didn't realize it. So the fastest I was ever able to hit was 11.18 seconds according to Dragy, but it wasn't invalid time. I think because it was cloudy as hell. Even so, if it was a half second fast, it's still under 12 seconds. The fastest valid test was 12.17 according to the Dragy and around 10.5 off of the speedometer. I failed to mention in the last video that even though my fastest time prior to the cam was 12.4 seconds, I was consistently hitting numbers of around 13.5. Now, after the cam installed, I'm consistently hitting numbers of 12.5 with occasional instances of 0 to 60 times of 11-ish seconds. Not only is this an improvement, but it also coincides with other YouTubers who have done camshaft videos and documented their own 0 to 60 times themselves. Not to really shit on myself, but if I wasn't dealing with my disease and my many surgeries that have been done to my left foot, which yes, definitely affects my shifting, I think that I could pull better numbers, or at the least better consistent numbers. There is more interesting information though. According to the Dragy, my thoughts about that whole low-end torque suffering are justifiable. Even on some of my faster times, valid or invalid, a vast majority of the data would show that the acceleration off that first gear from 0 to 20 and sometimes till 30 miles per hour, almost every single instance was slower after the install of the camshaft. Past that, the bike was quicker in its acceleration, which definitely matches what people are saying about how the mid and high end pull far harder. It's a weird trade-off, and it makes me wonder if heavier clutch springs would help with this. Outside of acceleration, one thing that I found is that my frequency of using wide open throttle has drastically changed. As I ride around town or to work or even most places that I like to ride, on acceleration I'm maybe only giving it 30 to at most 60% throttle. I also noticed that I don't have to give it as much throttle to maintain speeds either. Uphill roads are also far easier to travel on since I'm not having to push the engine much at all anymore unless that uphill road happens to be on a highway. And speaking of highway travel is not dramatically different. Yes, the acceleration is better past 60 miles an hour, but I don't think you're going to notice it all that much unless we're comparing to a bone stock motorcycle. The cam doesn't somehow make the bike safer to overtake someone on a one-lane road at highway speeds. It's simply not happening unless you have some sort of death wish. When I do travel on highway after the cam install, I don't feel as if I'm having to push the bike to hit its speed limiter. It's far more comfortable going 70 miles an hour for prolonged periods of time. I can't say this for sure since I don't have one of those tacks installed, but I don't feel as if I'm revving the bike as high as I did prior to the cam when I am pushing the bike to its top speed. Maintaining highway speeds is also far easier, by the way. Prior to the cam, it wasn't exactly terrible, especially compared to a stock 350, but now it is far less of an issue when there is a wind coming at you or in the event that you are traveling uphill on highway speeds. Depending on the situation, of course, you still might decrease in speed. It's just going to happen, but this for sure lessens that frequency by a substantial amount. There is one more negative thing I have to point out. So, when you start putting performance stuff onto bikes, cars, whatever, increasing horsepower typically will have an impact on gas mileage. This is very true with the 350. Now, I didn't run any sort of math numbers on this. I might in a follow-up video specifically talking about mile per gallon, but I do notice that I am having to fill up more frequent. Only, however, if I'm traveling mostly on highway. City travel and roads 55 and under, I actually think the cam has benefited the mile per gallon since I am having to use less throttle and not revving the bike anywhere near as much as I did prior. But highway, yeah, it definitely drinks gas far more than ever. I'm cool with it personally, especially since I've had bikes in the past with mile per gallons in like the 30s. My old 88 VMAX sucked gas worse than any other bike I've ever had in my entire life. Either way, it's definitely something you have to think about if fuel economy is top on your list. I've had a lot of people ask me in other videos if I ever plan to bypass the speed limiter on my Classic, which is apparently done easily by swapping the throttle body ECU from that of a Hunter 350. I've been very undecided about it, and it hasn't really changed, if I'm honest with you. I want to do it, but at the same time I'm slightly concerned that I'd be pushing the bike far too much than it should be. I don't know. I'll tell you what, if they ever decide to release a big bore kit, I will install both that Hunter throttle body and the big bore kit and see what happens. But until then, I think that I'm just going to leave this alone. So where do we go from here? Is this the end of Project Royal Enfield? As far as performance parts go, unless someone finally gets around to making a big bore kit for the 350J series, I think that's going to be it. However, I do have other things that I want to do to this bike, such as, shocks, levers, the tachometer, LED indicators. Yes, I have plans for sure, so don't worry about that. Again, a huge thank you has to go out to Works Power Sports of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Check out their social media pages, especially if you are in the area, because I plan on attending some local events and bringing my Classic 350 out there. I'd love to see your guys' bikes. I don't care if it's from another brand. I love all motorcycles, and honestly, I love scooters too. Anything on two wheels with an engine, I'm all about it. I just think all of it's cool. With that said, guys, thank you so much. I hope this video has helped you out in some way. Take care and ride safe.